Hello, my name is Colin Wade, and I decided to do my meet and mid topic over whether or not wearing compression socks or stockings will improve exercise performance, as well as improve recovery after exercise. So, what exactly are compression socks and stockings? Compression socks or stockings are fabric that's specifically made to be more tight around the ankles and become less tight as it moves up towards the knee. In the 1980s, they started becoming popular and circling through media and different sources of advertisements, such as magazines, newspapers, and the television. And within these advertisements, they were making claims that if you wore these, it would keep your legs from getting tired by allowing blood to flow easier from your ankles to your knees, which as a result will increase your functionality of your blood vessels. And as a result, it will also ease your swelling in your feet and your ankles after physical exercise. And a lot of these claims made by these companies and these compression socks were actually found to be true by different research and different studies. And a lot of studies found that if you wore these, they would do all the things that the claims made, but they would also help in preventing several vein diseases, such as phlebitis and deep vein thrombosis. Here's kind of an idea to give you what compression socks are and how they're kind of designed. So basically, they're designed all, of course, based around compression level and firmness. So basically, what they do is you want your firmness to be better or more around your ankles to provide for ankle support and come less towards the knee so you can have better movement. So basically, compression will decrease as you move up from the ankle to the knee. Around the ankle or the feet, it's going to be around 30 mgs, which is considered firm or extra firm. Around the knee, it's going to be around 20 mgs, which is considered only mild or moderate. Just like anything else, compression socks vary with different types that you prefer. There's different levels of compression. So if you want more support around your ankles or your feet, you can move up to 40 mg or 50 mg. If you want less support around your ankle or feet, you can move down to 20 mg. Same thing for knee. If you want a little bit more support around your knee, you can move them up to 30 mg. If you want a little less support, you can move it down to 10 mg. Once again, this all depends upon the athlete and what they prefer when they're performing physical exercise. So recently, these compression socks and stockings have actually started to reappear through media and different advertisements today. But with these different advertisements and with these different compression socks, everything showing up, they switched to a new focus that if you wore these, it would actually improve exercise performance as well as improve energy recovery after exercise. And with these claims, a bunch of new companies started popping up, such as CopperFit Energy Socks, Lasso, and Jobst. And of course, with every new claim and every new company that pops up making claims about these and that have no scientific evidence behind them, a lot of studies are going to go and they're going to go examine it and see if these compression socks are actually true and all these claims that they're making, are they false? So do they work or not? So basically what we're going to do during this presentation is we're going to look at a couple studies and see if they actually are effective, if compression socks are effective at improving exercise performance and energy recovery. So the first study we're going to look at is a study by Wolfgang Kemmler. Basically what Wolfgang wanted to do is he wanted to test the effect of running performance on male runners. So what he did, he had 20 moderately trained athletes selected for the study, and he had each one of them perform a VO2 max test both while they're with comparing compression socks and without wearing compression socks. And what Wolfgang found is that time under load and total work were both significantly higher when compression socks were worn during the test. Wolfgang also found that very slight changes to VO2 max when compression socks were worn, and running performance was also higher aerobically and anaerobically when compression socks were worn over like your regular socks, such as like your Fruit of the Loom, your Adidas, or your Nike socks. Basically your socks without any compression or any of the facts I listed before. The second study we're going to look at that supported compression socks is by Brophy-Williams. Basically what Brophy-Williams did is he examined the recovery aspect and the psychological impact that these compression socks may have on athletes that wear them. In his study, he had 12 well-trained male runners perform 2 5-kilometer running trials with a 1-hour recovery period between them. This was performed in 2 sessions that were completely randomized. There was one session where the compression socks were worn, and there was one session where the compression socks were not worn and regular socks just were worn. What Brophy-Williams found is that running performance between time trials were similar when the compression socks were worn. So basically when the compression socks were worn for the first trial during the recovery and then they performed the second trial, they had almost similar same times as they had from the first trial during the second trial. And he also found that if regular socks were worn, there was actually decreased performance in the second trial than when compared to compression socks. He also found that on a psychological aspect that if athletes actually felt or actually believed that what they were wearing could improve their recovery or their exercise performance, they actually performed better on the test. And this is just like with everything else, like if you believe something makes you better, you're going to be more confident and possibly perform better. This could be anything from like a lucky bracelet, a lucky rabbit's foot, or something like that. If you believe you wear it and if you believe you perform better while wearing that, you're going to perform better. So the third study we're going to look at that supports compression socks is by Stuart A. Armstrong. What Armstrong wanted to do is he wanted to analyze the recovery aspect after longer periods of time. So the two, basically the two studies we looked at before this, they were more focused around shorter bouts of exercise. So what Stuart wanted to do is he wanted to focus on what happens when you put compression socks on longer aspects and longer periods of exercise. So basically for his study, he selected 33 marathon runners and he randomized them into a compression sock group or a regular sock group. He then had them perform a graded treadmill test both 2 weeks before and after the marathon that they were supposed to run. And also after the marathon, he had them during the recovery aspect of the marathon. So between the two, between the last graded treadmill test, he wanted them to wear their compression socks or the regular socks 48 hours after completing that marathon. And with this, he also wanted to record the change in treadmill times recorded between the first graded treadmill test and the second graded treadmill test. Basically, what Armstrong found was that the compression sock group actually, their average run time to exhaustion increased by 2.6%. And the ones that wore regular socks, their average run time exhaustion decreased to 3.4%. So basically, to sum up this study, it was basically shown that wearing compression socks can improve recovery after longer bouts of exercise, as well as the shorter bouts of exercise that we saw before. The fourth study that I'm going to look at is by Ali et al. What Ali basically wanted to do is he wanted to evaluate the effect on that compression socks had on exercise performance and recovery. So to do this, he had 12 competitive runners, and he tasked them with completing 4 10-kilometer time trials. And between each one of these time trials, he had them rest a certain amount of time. Compression socks and regular socks were randomized, of course, and tested leg power and performance pre and post run were recorded to see how compression socks affected between these 10-kilometer time trials. What Ali found is that there was actually a better maintenance of leg power after short bouts of exercise with rest while wearing compression socks. Our compression socks were also rated as being the more comfortable choice and actually more suitable for exercise. And he also found that there was actually no significant difference in performance times while wearing the compression socks over regular socks. The last study that I want to look at that supports the claims made by compression socks is by Eric Rivas. What Rivas wanted to do, he basically wanted to study the ventilatory and the recovery effects that compression socks may have on athletes and those wearing them. So what Rivas did is he had 13 young endurance-trained runners, and he put them in a randomized design where half wore compression socks and half did not. After this, a graded exercise test was performed, and during the graded exercise test, basically what the graded exercise test was, it had baseline rest with intensity increasing from submaximal at 23% to a maximal. Results of this study showed that the wearing compression socks actually had a benefit in submaximal and maximal ventilatory efficiency. Rivas also found that while wearing compression socks, there was improved lactate clearance at VO2 max and also during recovery, which actually can help in the recovery aspect before engaging in more exercise performance. But Rivas also found that there was no difference in rate of preceded exertion, heart rate, breathing rate, or consumption of oxygen. So basically, to sum up all the pros that we found throughout the last 5 studies, this is basically what we found. So basically, it showed that compression socks had slight improvement in aerobic and anaerobic functionality. It also showed that compression socks assisted in recovery after long and short bouts of exercise. It also shown, once again, that the psychological aspect can actually be improved if the athletes believe what they are wearing, the compression socks that they're wearing can actually improve the performance. Which, again, it depends on the athlete, depends how they're acting. So it's hard to really generalize that in certain studies. They also found that there was a better maintenance of leg power after shorter bouts of exercise. Of course, this is what the recovery and rest aspect included with it. It's kind of interesting. So when you look back at all these studies, what they found pros in is there was a recovery aspect included with them. So basically, this recovery aspect helps the compression stocks do what they're supposed to do. Also, athletes rated, of course, compression socks as a more comfortable choice, and if they had to choose this over regular socks, they would choose compression socks to wear during exercise. Compression socks were also found to have benefits in maximal and submaximal ventilation, and thus this means that they have a better breathing maintenance when during some maximal and maximal testing. There's also improved clearance of lactate during recovery, which also supports the recovery aspect of the compression socks. So basically, of course, when there's ever a new study and there's research found that supports the claims, there's also going to be research that opposes the claim. And the first study that we're going to look at is by Sperlich et al. And what Sperlich basically wanted to do is he wanted to test the compression socks effect on overall exercise performance in athletes. So what he did is he had 15 well-trained endurance athletes perform 4 submaximal and maximal tests. And these, of course, were randomized, so they were both performed with and without compression socks. While doing these maximal and submaximal tests, time to exhaustion, lactate concentration, oxygen use, pH levels, and ratings of muscle soreness were all recorded and evaluated. What Sperlich found was that there was no difference in submaximal and maximal oxygen uptake, pH levels, and lactate levels while wearing compression socks over regular socks. He also found that muscle soreness, rate of procedure exertion, and time to exhaustion were also unaffected by wearing compression socks. In conclusion, there was no performance benefits for wearing compression stockings. The second study we're going to look at that opposes the claims made by compression socks is by Francisco Urrices. What Francisco basically did is he wanted to examine the effectiveness in preventing muscle damage and maintaining performance of these compression socks and if it had any effect on it. So basically what Francisco did to test this is he had 34 experienced marathon runners randomly selected and divided to perform the study. And within these 34 runners, half wore compression socks and half did not, and they weren't told what they were wearing because it's randomized. A marathon race was performed, and during this marathon race, venous blood, jump height, leg muscle power, and all that were measured before and after the race. And of course, with the marathon, there's no recovery time recorded. The results are there's no recovery time between, of course, you're running the whole time. So results showed that there was no significant difference in post-race time, as well as jump height and leg muscle power. In conclusion, compression socks did not improve running performance and running pace. There was also no improved prevention of exercise-induced muscle detriments that comes on from muscle soreness and from basically fatigue and overexertion. The next study we're going to look at is by Ryder et al. And what Ryder basically wanted to do is he wanted to analyze the physiological variables associated with running performance, so such as like what may happen with your organs inside your body, your heart, and stuff like that. So what Ryder did is he took 10 NCAA Division III cross-country runners, and he randomly divided them into 2 groups, of course, with half the group wearing compression socks and half the group not wearing compression socks. And didn't tell them which group had what. He then required them to complete a maximal treadmill test. And when this maximal treadmill test, he performed 3 minutes stages of increasing speed and incline. And then after these 3 minutes of stages and incline were done, he had them perform a 1.5 minute walking recovery. 7 days later, the group switched, so the ones that wore compression socks now wore regular socks, and the ones that wore regular socks were not going to wear compression socks, and he performed the same study again. The results of the study showed that time to fatigue showed no significant difference while wearing compression socks over regular socks. There was also no known effect on improving exercise performance. The fourth study that we're going to look at that opposes the certain claims made by compression sock companies is by Juan Del Caso. What Juan basically wanted to study is he wanted to see the prevention of muscular damage and preservation of performance during longer bouts of exercise that compression socks may have. So to do this, he actually wanted to do it on triathletes and those performing, the Ironman triathlons and stuff like that. So during this, he had the 36 triathletes, and he had them wear 19 wore compression socks and 17 wore regular socks. They then completed in a timed half Ironman competitive triathlon, and during this, pre and post maximal height and leg power recorded both before and after the race. Preceded exertion and muscle soreness were also observed. So basically what Juan found within his study is that total race time, leg muscle power, jump height, preceded muscle soreness, and rate of preceded exertion were not all different between the groups. There was no significant difference between wearing compression socks and wearing your normal regular Nike socks in that. In conclusion, there was no advantage for maintaining muscle function, and wearing compression socks actually did not improve overall exercise performance or stuff like that. The last study that showed that opposed the claims made by sock companies was by Verkusen et al. What Verkusen wanted to do is he wanted to evaluate the effect on performance and the physiological responses that compression socks may have. For this, he wanted to test it more. He didn't want to do it really on a flat surface. He wanted to do it more like what happens when trail runners do this, or those who hike, basically. But what he wanted is he had 11 trained trail runners, and he had them complete a 15.6-kilometer trail run in competition. So they're all going against each other, competing, see who would win first. And within the study, it was randomized in 6-4 compression socks and 5 did not. And to evaluate what the compression socks have an effect or not, counter movement jump, maximal voluntary contractions, run times, heart rate, rate of perceived exertion, and blood lactate were all examined during this competition race. And results showed that there was no significant difference in any of the variables observed above and listed above. So basically, there was no practical or physiological benefits wearing compression socks over your regular socks. So to sum up all the cons that we found with the recent proven studies, basically it said that compression socks were not effective in improving overall exercise performance at all. And thus race times and running pace were all unaffected. Compression socks were also found to have no advantage in preventing fatigue and exercise-induced muscle soreness, and maintenance and muscle function was unaltered. There was also no improved benefits for maintenance of leg power and jump height after long bouts of exercise. Of course, with all these studies, again, we reserved for the cons, there was no recovery period reported between them. It was always a triathlon or a marathon or a recovery period after the test was performed in the one study. But there was no recovery period performed, like some of the studies showed with the pros. So basically, when no rest or recovery period was shown, there was no improved benefits or maintenance of leg power because there was no time for rest, basically, for the compression socks to work for the recovery time. So basically, also, there was shown that there was no practical or physiological benefits wearing compression socks. Of course, this is like your maximal voluntary contraction, your oxygen uptake, your rate of perceived exertion, and heart rate, lactate acids, and stuff like that. So to summarize everything and put all into a conclusion of what we found, basically the claims made by your compression sock companies is partially wrong and it's partially right. The part that they're partially right is that compression socks are actually beneficial in the recovery aspect of exercise. So basically, they actually help participants recover more quickly and more efficiently during breaks and after exercise. And they were wrong in the fact that compression socks does not improve performance aspect. So basically running without running without a recovery time and just running straight like a marathon or triathlon, socks alone will not improve your running performance, your pace, or your overall physical performance. So basically, to put this all in perspective too, and see which compression socks might work for each sport, the most beneficial that your compression socks, after studying all the research studies, is actually going to be like in your football and your team sports. So basically, the main purpose of this is within football and team sports, it's basically a lot of short bursts of exercise with rest periods in between them. So like rest periods between plays in football, playing defense on basketball. Wrestling, you have little interventions before your next match and all that. So basically, it showed that if there was exercise, or if there was a recovery time or rest time incorporated within the exercise, such as with team sports, this actually gave athletes time to help maintain leg power, remove lactate, and improve their ventilation. And where compression socks were found to be least beneficial was in your cross country and your longer track times, like your 1 mile and your 2 mile. The reason for this is that with longer bouts of exercise, there's no recovery between them, such as like the cross country and the stuff I listed above. So with this, there's no time for recovery. So there's going to be race times that are going to be unaffected, and there's going to be loss of leg power due to exhaustion. Doing that, there's no recovery time for the compression socks to take work. This also has like onset of muscle soreness, and your physiological aspects of your body will, like your heart rate and all that, will be unchanged. Here's some of the here's some of the references throughout the paper. And that puts an end to my presentation. I hope you learned something about compression socks from listening to this presentation. It's hard to see there's different things out there and what claims are actually real or false. So I hope this actually helped you, differ between if compression socks are actually beneficial in the certain aspects and what they do. I hope some of this debunks some of the claims made by these compression sock companies. Thank you.